Welcome to our daily Advent devotional for Wednesday, December 16th. My name is Denise Haskins, and I'm so glad that you chose to join me today. So the reason that I'm here today is obviously to try and give us something to think about in the midst of all of the craziness that is part of the Advent season as we anticipate Christmas and everything that is going on there. And today in particular, I want us to slow down for just a moment as we contemplate one of the 101 amazing things about Christmas. We probably haven't been going out to the malls or out shopping nearly as much as we have in past years because of this COVID craziness. But at the same time, we are not immune to how the holidays are generally celebrated in this day and age. Certainly there's a busyness that's going on. If we were going to the stores, we'd find that the Christmas carols were being pumped out loud and fast, that the decorations would have been up. Decorations, in some cases, have been up even since before Halloween. And this crazy, chaotic noise, if you will, that we get from all sides when we turn on our televisions and we see all of the Christmas specials and the Hallmark movies that are on to celebrate this season, that in the midst of all of these celebrations, there's not a lot of celebrating Christ in the midst of those. It seems like our focus has turned to Santa and reindeer and gifts, and how do we get that perfect gift for the person that we love? Well, we're no different than centuries of people before us. Christmas has long time been a time of revelry and excess, if you will. In fact, in the early 1800s, there were groups known as mummers in England who would go around. They perform skits and sing songs, but they didn't often celebrate or emphasize the season's holy elements. Even in church, people wore wild garb, and gambling was not uncommon, even during Christmas services. How would you like that? After church, some congregants would storm the homes of the well-off, pounding on doors and demanding their finest food and drink. In some ways, it was described as a combination of Mardi Gras and Halloween, not something we'd necessarily associate with Christmas, especially for those of us who observe Christmas as part of our faith tradition. It wasn't until about 1840 Queen Victoria of England married Prince Albert of Germany. Now, for Prince Albert, Christmas was a time of family, of fellowship, and most profoundly of faith. It was anticipating and celebrating the birth of our Savior. So when he married Queen Victoria, it changed the way that people in England began to observe Christmas, and it brought with it a reverent spirit and a family focus to Christmas as it looked forward to the birth of Christ. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't anticipate marrying the head of a country and having that kind of influence. And this little video is probably not going to go much farther than Clearfield, Pennsylvania. But what if we did influence those with whom we have influence? Our family, our friends, neighbors, co-workers, and helping to bring the focus back from all of the jubilation, the craziness that sometimes gets associated with this holiday, and instead focusing once more on our faith in Jesus and our looking forward to his birth and the coming of the Messiah who would cleanse us from all sin and restore us to relationship with God once and for all. Well, as we continue in our observance of how A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens has lessons for us. We are looking at 52 little lessons from A Christmas Carol by Bob Welch. And today I want to focus a little bit, instead of on the classic words from the story, I want to focus on one of the film adaptations. In 1984, I believe it was George C. Scott, starred as Ebenezer Scrooge. And I remember this is probably the version that has most impacted my memory of this story. And at the end of his time with the Spirit of Christmas Present, the Spirit opens his robes and reveals that hidden there are two children. They are disheveled, they are scrawny, they are uncomfortable to look at. And they were uncomfortable for Scrooge to look at too. And so he's asked who they are, and the Spirit says they are ignorance and want. Ignorance and want exist in our current day as well. And Scrooge asks the question, whose children are they? They are man's. They are humankind's. And when Scrooge asks, do they have no refuge or resource? The Spirit throws back in Scrooge's face his words from earlier that day. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? And in the movie version, Scrooge beseeches upon the Spirit, please cover them. I do not wish to see them. In the midst of all the craziness that Christmas can conjure up, especially in this day and age, whether it's the overwhelming music, whether it's the craziness that we go into decorating the stores, the streets, our own homes, in the midst of the craziness that engulfs us, we can't even get away from it. When we turn on our televisions, we see Christmas screamed at us. But so often those elements, are not about the holy observance of Christmas, but they're also about the excesses. They're about the overwhelming pieces that can be part of the celebration. And what we often in this time fail to remember is that in the midst of our happy Christmases, or sometimes happier Christmases, in the midst of all the gift giving and the celebrating with food, there are those who are in need. There are those who are hungry. There are those who are poor. There are those who don't have opportunity to celebrate the way that we do. Scrooge's response, and I think one that would be very natural for all of us, is, please cover them. I do not wish to see them. It makes us uncomfortable to see those who are in need, to see those who are in want. Perhaps it's because we envision that if it weren't for about a change of circumstances, we could be those who are in need. We could be those who are in want. But thank goodness for our Savior, Jesus Christ. For Jesus, who, had he been presented with these same children, would have said instead, bring them here. I wish to see them. The Spirit of Christmas Present has been trying to show Scrooge a truth that he long ago disregarded, that he is no better than anyone else. The quote is this: it may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. And so trying to expose him to ignorance and want is trying to expose him to the fact that he is as much in need, and maybe even more than them. James 1 verse 27 says religion, that's the rituals that we go through, not the faith, but the religion that God our Father accepts, are pure and faultless as this: to look upon orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. If we're going to be caught up in ritual, let us be caught up in that, the kind that cares for those who are in need, and in keeping ourselves from being polluted by the craziness of the world. But too often we label the people with baggage as undeserving of our time and attention. You may have even heard, they brought it upon themselves. A lot of times these people who are needy, the ones who have addictions that don't fit in elsewhere, they are the most in need. And to follow Jesus, as we claim we are trying to do, means seeing the world as he sees it, loving the world as he loves it. And so we can't look away from the need, because to do otherwise is just to feel guilt or shame. Jesus offers us and those who are in want and in need these words of comfort from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, beginning with verse 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Sometimes we identify ourselves as being the ones who are weary, and no doubt we have moments and times of weariness, but we should also seek to give rest to those who are weary because of poverty and want. And that begins with a willingness to see within the folds of the robe what we don't want to see, what makes us uncomfortable, that there are indeed those in need. And we, as Christ followers, have the obligation and the potential to make their lives better. Something for all of us to hold in our hearts today as we go forward.